conflict with anything anymore. My life is
Careful what you wish for.
Mr. Chair, you are now live.
Our life is so boring, nothing changed.
I know. Oh, no, mine changed.
Kurt, you're live now.
Okay. Well, good evening. This is the Annapolis Transportation Board convening. Come to order. And we will start to go through the agenda one by one. The roll call we can do visually, I think, which is very nice. I see Craig Harrison, who is our guest, me, Beth Dolezal, David DeQuincio, Cara Fleck, Ellie Tierney, Julian is our moderator, administrator, Tom Rikas, Charles Brooks is a visitor, maybe one day to become officially a member of this thing if we can only get it through the confirmation process. Zoe Johnson and Elvia, and I'll make the same remark about Elvia, also somewhere in confirmation entanglements. And then Kwaku has signed on from the Eastern Shore, I'm guessing. So welcome all. First of all, I would like to start with the status of appointments. There are a number of people who have been proposed for membership to the Annapolis Transportation Board by the member, and they're somewhere in the confirmation process, either by the Transportation Board or the City Council or both. And maybe you have some intelligence on that, Ellie, about what's where.
I don't have anything more than what you heard at the Transportation Committee meeting. My understanding is that during the pandemic, we sort of put this pause on boards and commissions. Hillary isn't here to verify that, and basically a stall because of other issues taking priority. And I believe Hillary focused on other she was heavily involved in the Office of Emergency Management, call center, and all that stuff. And so yeah, we have yet to make the recommendation. And they have not been on the Transportation Committee agenda. I questioned that last transportation meeting, and that was what I was told. So I'm pushing to get them on the next Transportation Committee agenda, and then that's basically a, hate to use the word rubber stamp, but at this point, and then on to City Council.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, my observation, correct me if I'm wrong, is that these nominees are generally so good that it is something of a pro forma process at both the committee and full council level, and I would hope that you could somehow exert your influence to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, I know before I was alderwoman, I volunteered, and it's a big commitment, and it's an insult for the, for any optics that the city doesn't care about that. And I know that we do, but we gotta show it and get you guys on board. But I don't think it prevents anyone from participating. I see that some are, that you're here, but yeah, this has been long overdue.
Okay. Well, thanks for the update. What we have next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. David DeQuincy, I'm sorry. Tom put a very good summary of last meeting together, and I sent it around. If there are no comments, you all had an opportunity to comment. I would propose that we approve it and move on. Is there any comment? No objection having been heard, I will deem it approved, and we go on to the next agenda item. This is the period for comment by members of the public, and I'm not sure, but Tom Rikas may have arranged for an attendance by somebody from the public not presently on the screen. I guess Elvia and Charles would also fit into that category. So if any of you would like to say something for the benefit of the group, this is your chance.
Of electric, that's what I have to say. The more electric infrastructure we can put in, the better for purposes of, oh, you can't hear me, Ellie, hang on.
Can't hear her either.
Let me get a headset back on. Yeah, my only comment is that, that we do everything that we can to encourage electrifying the city of Annapolis fleet as much as we can. And I know it's just a question of money, and also to increase the infrastructure charging capability. This is the best thing that we can do for keeping our air clean for climate change purposes. That and planting trees. So I think we should all be advocates for electric transportation of all kinds, as is our guest tonight.
Thank you. I have a question before you go away. There's an item later on our agenda about parking spaces and I guess fines associated with vehicles not electric parking in them. But I wanted to ask you about the present situation in city garages. You have an electric vehicle, and so you know all of this. I know there are charging stations. Are they presently free, or are they presently metered and charged to credit cards?
They're free.
All right, I
The
presume
ones in
that's
the garages, the ones in the garages are free. The one at the library, the new West Street Library, those cost money, as does the one at the Pitt Moyer Rec Center.
And that raises a question which is a little bit ahead of the agenda. I presume at some time that will no longer be the case. When electric vehicles become popular, some of these inducements will start evaporating, and those charging capabilities, money charging capabilities, will be turned on. Is there a plan for that, or is that just on hold?
Well, the reason that there's a charge for the ones at the library and at the rec center is that they were put in by BG&E under a program with the state to put in a certain number of charging stations throughout the state.
Mhm.
The ones in the garages, as I understand it, were put in by the city. So that doesn't apply.
So the city could at some time change the,
Yeah, but think about it. The city's already charging to park in the garage. So, you know, and we're not talking about a huge amount of electricity here. It's not like you're plugging in a 747, you know.
well, I didn't mean to raise that
Yeah,
issue for the moment, but I did want to relate it to the item of legislation, which I think has already passed. But
yes, it did. Yeah.
Is it really necessary when we have transitioned to charging for the electricity, that is charging a fee for charging your vehicle? Could not this this problem of parking over time be taken care of in the fare structure? That is, that if the electric vehicle is charged and you remain in your place occupying it for an additional 4 hours, you start paying at an accelerating rate. Is that a good idea?
You know, that's kind of how Tesla does it. So Tesla owners can plug into the superchargers for free, but if they stay over after the car is completely charged for some amount of time, I don't know what it is, then there starts to be a cost. So there are lots of different ways to regulate that, but that isn't that isn't even as big an issue as having an F-150 park in a charging spot.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
until
Okay.
we get an electric F-150, which is probably not that far off.
Yeah.
And that's usually the case at Pip Moyer. There's either a F-150 or Suburban in that spot.
Yeah, and that's a real problem because they have no way to enforce it. Everybody just throws their hands up.
Yeah, we just implemented a fine for that.
Well, I wonder how that's going to be enforced, Ellie,
I
because
know. It's all about
because
enforcement.
the police will say that's a parking problem, not ours. So, yeah. So that there needs to be some policy to follow the
Well,
legislation.
I think what would help is if the sign says that. At least that's a deterrent.
The signage will say that. And
Yeah.
actually, electric vehicle signage isn't all that easy because at some point it's going to have to all be in line with state and actually federal signage. So for now, we can get away with putting a sign up that says electric vehicle parking only while charging. But that may change down the road. But unfortunately, all this stuff is going at a snail's pace, even though we're supposed to have 300,000 battery fueled cars on the road in Maryland by 2025. And we're currently at about 30,000. So that's a big leap.
Is the meter technology capable of snapping a photograph of the car and basically, if you don't plug in, it's not an electric vehicle and you get a fine in the mail?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Okay, any other remarks by our visitors? Hearing nothing, let's move to our guest speaker, Craig Harrison, who's going to talk
Before you move on, Kurt,
electric vehicle.
before you move on, I did extend an invitation to.
Can't hear
the
you.
War-
Can't hear you, Tom.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? Low bandwidth.
I can hear you, and I think I know what the question you're raising is the person from Ward 1 that you wanted included.
So I extended an invitation to give him the opportunity to bring Ward 1 issues to the forefront to the board. But they also wanted him to have the politic for the WARA meeting coming up this Thursday. That will be a presentation on the City Dock Action Committee. What's going to happen at City Dock will have a tremendous impact on the parking situation in downtown. We already see the impact on the neighborhoods from the recovery zones where parking spaces have been taken out of the inventory. So hopefully Mr. Mealy may still be able to join us, but I sent you all a link to the WARA announcement, and I hope that you will all take a moment Thursday night to participate in that.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, and next on is our speaker, Craig Harrison, who has a lot to say about electric vehicles get people around town. So go for it, Craig.
Well, with Elvia and Tom, the lead into what we're doing with electric vehicles was a great segue. Lisa and I have the company of Annapolis Event Tours. It used to be called Urban Event Tours, and we provide transportation in and around the city. Primarily what we do is we do tours, we do special events, and also we do the Naval Academy games. We take people from the different hotels over to Gate 4, and then we take the people from Gate 4 over the sections if they challenge to make it that far, whether due to tailgates or whatever it might be. We do have 10 electric carts. 2 of them have doors on the side so we can use them for the winter, and also they have heaters. And these are manufactured by Global Electric Motors, owned by Polaris. And we seat 5 people at a time. We keep them overnight in garage. 8 of them are there, and 2 of them are over across the street over at the Graduate Hotel. Now, what we do, our goal is to provide transportation for everything from memorial services, corporate functions, the football games, as I mentioned, as well as weddings. And for the most part during the week, like today, I did a history tour of people. You take around Annapolis, which is truly a museum without walls, and people just really enjoy it. And we get people involved with not only the history of Annapolis, but also the spirit of Annapolis. When I start talking about the tug of war, the oyster roast and burning of your socks and things like that. People enjoy that. And what we're really trying to do, and I think that Ellie was really instrumental in this, we are looking to be able to provide transportation for people in two different ways. Hillman Garage is going to be demolished and rebuilt. We thought it was going to start in January. It's probably going to be, and Ellie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're talking about 2021 before the demolition, and I don't know.
Yeah, it actually got hot off the press. I can tell you this, because it's a cast in place structure, demolition will start, and then we get another Christmas season in, it will start January 2022.
2022.
Yeah, but the schedule is quicker, so the end date stays the same.
Good luck to them. That's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, it's one of these.
Right, let's keep.
Yeah.
But what we have proposed to the city and to the different contracting teams who are going after this contract is that we will provide transportation to get people who used to, all the city employees who used to be over in Hillman Garage, will have 3 different routes, and we'll go out and pick them up from different parking garages and be able to move them around. And one way or the other, we've got to move people around inside the cities. Inside the city, it makes a lot of sense, and because we are electric carts, and Elvia is going to just love this. First of all, there's no pollution involved with it. We're going to have the different routes, and we're going to have the carts going on a continuous basis, and we think that this is going to be able to support the city and move people around very efficiently and economically. We are also discussing with BG&E, the people, Gupta especially, Davish Gupta, they do have a contract with the city for what they call a connected community. And they're very interested in supporting us on this, to move people around, taking people from Presidential Hill over to downtown where there's not a lot of parking and it's too far for them to walk. So we're, in effect, we call it easy for e-cruiser on call. And we think that this is going to work. And we've talked with the director of transportation, and Rick is seeing how this will augment everything that the city is doing at the present time. So I think that what we really have here is we've got these 10 cruisers. It is an asset to the community, and we're just trying to leverage this in the right way so everybody prospers. And I think that's, I sent out an email that kind of encapsulates everything that I have in one of our little brochures.
Craig, would you be willing to elaborate a little bit on the financial model which you are following for all of this, and whether it's working or whether it will be changing in the future, or what do you see happening?
Well, if it wasn't for COVID, it would be working very nicely. But, you know, we have not been doing a lot of tours. The second Navy football game has been canceled, and the NCAA goes ahead and they contract with us to move the people over to the academy. As far as the tours go, it has really picked up dramatically. People are doing a lot of things closer as opposed to taking long vacations. And so that's been very positive to see. As far as with the city and with the, for the support of the Hillman Garage renovation, we've put in a very, as a matter of fact, very low ball. I would say a low ball. As a matter of fact, like 30% less than what we charge to the city on other things. So the numbers make sense. But if it starts at 2022, gosh, I hope we're still going to be around then, because it's not that easy. You know, we've got, like everybody else, we've got our threshold points, and we're trying to hit those.
I'm really, you have to go back to basics on me. By finances, I meant how does it break out among fare? Are there set fares? Do you run on tips? Is it voluntary contributions? Is there grant money from the city? What is the total revenue stream, and how durable is it, do you think?
Our tours are a set price with tips on top of it.
Okay,
We have a number of drivers who handle that. And e-cruiser, that's a different animal as opposed to what we're going to be doing for the city. Okay, we're a woman-owned company, and what we do is we're going to submit a price, an hourly rate price for each one of the carts, and take it from there. In regards to the e-cruiser, that will be like an Uber, dare I use the word, and it will be so people can go ahead and go online, pick up the cruiser, and come by and pick them up.
got you. Are there any regulatory matters that affect you?
As a matter of fact, we spoke with Rick Gordon about this to find out, to make sure that we're clean on this. We are not going to be a taxi service. And there's a world of difference between the two. So we don't believe so, but we're looking into that to make sure that we're clean. We do have Ron Jarakowski, Jericho, who handles us on all of our legal matters to make sure that we're doing it in the right way.
Okay. Any questions or discussions for our speaker from members of the board?
Craig, I'm looking at what I believe is your website, urbaneventtours.com, and the vehicle is not what I envisioned at all. It's actually, I think with COVID right now, you do kind of have a lot going for you because it's so open. But I wonder, how does this work on a cold February morning?
Well, we have not had to handle that during COVID yet.
Right.
But we have two vehicles that have solid doors on the side of them. Now, then,
And heaters.
pardon me?
And heaters.
And heaters.
I can speak to that, Craig.
Yes, you can.
Craig with his charity is, we do a Trust in Heights. I think we did twice. We do a Christmas decoration tour with Santa Claus as riding with us, AKA John Hammond. But so yeah, it's nice and toasty. It's sealed up, and yeah, it's cozy warm.
Great.
And by the way, if you hear this voice to the side, Lisa was stung by 14 hornets today down at St. John. So she really is not ready. After being stung in the ear and all over, she's not doing too well. So I apologize that she's not with us. And so does she. Believe me, she'd rather be talking online. Hornet stings are nasty.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say about this whole thing where you're talking about moving employees and everything. Two things. Well, one, I've been, as Kwaku can say, probably been a thorn in his side, because I'm all in favor of getting rid of our diesel buses and going to all electric. So I think once people get used to your cars, Craig, I think that's going to open up people's minds as to what's possible with an electric. And also, they're so fun. They're so fun to ride in. Everybody's always smiling in one of those.
Well, Kara, we talked with Rick Gordon about that. As much as they want to expand some of the transportation systems, they feel that we would be a wonderful augment to that. And it makes sense. We can work through the details, but I think that it's a win-win for the city, for the transportation department, and most importantly, for everybody that lives here. Because we can go places, we're only 4.5 feet wide, so we can go places that the buses or some of the other tourist buses go that they can't even think about. And we talked with Eric Evans about how do we augment what's going on currently with the circulator. Because a lot of people don't ride the circulator. I think it's because they can't look into it. And maybe there's a little bit of a retention. They don't want to do it for one reason. But with us, you come by, we'll pick you up and just go. you know, and I think everybody wins on the transportation side.
Is that free though, like the circulator then?
That's what we're planning on doing. You know, we're
Okay.
negotiating with the with the administration, and I think Ellie is really our sponsor on this thing about what's the best way to do it, as is Rick Gordon. So we're trying to pull everything together. We don't want to rush into this. We want to do it right. And so that's
Greg,
we
Greg,
really
you mentioned something about the circulator, which is kind of a sore point, and it's something that's come up a number of times. I've had a large number of women. They are apprehensive about getting on the circulator because of visibility problems.
That's right.
And then secondly, there is nothing on the circulator that says it's a free ride, which seems a
Or,
little silly. We should,
or even says what it really does.
yes.
You know, who knows where it takes you
And
in
the other
those
thing,
windows that you can't see in.
yeah, the other thing about Craig's vehicle is he can make signs for it quite easily, whereas wrapping something huge like the circulator is a lot of money and a lot of time.
Yeah, thank you for that. That seems to be the obstacle. They use Reston Limousine. They subcontracted it out to Reston Limousine, and there's some restrictions. And you know, we've asked. Well, they are frustrated because when they first got them, we said to wrap them with something exciting, or, so they wrap them, and then it just it doesn't look welcoming at all. And I mean, for my opinion, I just always think that you can't shop with your eyes from the circulator. You just and going down Duke of Gloucester is just a total waste of gasoline. It's just dead space. So I think just the agility of Craig's services is much better. I'm not saying that he goes the wrong way down a one-way street, but he does go around State Circle and all the circles and navigates better than the circulator does.
Can't they take the stuff off the windows of the circulator?
There's a cost apparently that is, Rick isn't here, but it's not feasible.
and if I could address that, because we've met with John Kemp and Kevin Wards, who really are SP Plus. They're looking forward to working with us on this. And that's how we got involved with what we're going to be doing on the Hillman renovation. And they feel that they've set out a couple different tracks and they're ready to go along those things. I think SP Plus has been great to work with in so many ways. They are not crazy. The cost of Reston Limousine is, wow. It's very significant. And we think we could do it for maybe at least a third, maybe half, somewhere between a half and a third of the price, and give more service, because too many times the circulator goes by and there's nobody in it on an ongoing basis. And it's a little bit of pollution and it costs the city too much money. So
No, it's a lot of pollution.
yes,
Yes.
it's a lot of pollution. And I think that with the relationship that the city has with BGE, I think we could kind of put something together that makes sense for everybody.
Great. Well, thanks so much. It's a very interesting presentation, and you've planted seeds of good ideas for us. And
Appreciate the opportunity of speaking with you. I wish Lisa could have joined us.
yes, indeed. I hope
She feels better.
Yeah, she needs to get better. They can be tough.
Yeah, I
Very
hope
tough.
she's taking Benadryl or something.
Yeah, I walked into a yellow jacket nest once and went into shock over it. It can be dangerous.
All the best. Thanks for the opportunity. Take care.
One last technical thing. I'm a sailor and I had a great big marine battery that needed changing out. It's so heavy, it's difficult to handle, and it was very expensive. And I had an inspiration. I went to a golf cart battery. They cost half the price. They have exactly the same technical specifications, and you can put two 6 volts together to make 12, and they're more easily handled. So I recommend that to any sailor. Go with golf cart batteries.
Kurt, I thought you looked intelligent.
Hey, Kurt, before we,
Kurt, go to Tri-State Batteries.
Best price.
Best price by far. Because we have 9 of them and 12 of them in different carts,
Yeah.
all serial. So you ever need something answered on that, call Lisa.
Hey, Kurt,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yeah,
before we let Craig go, I just make a few comments. Craig, I'm very supportive of what you're doing. You probably don't know this, but my wife and I are trying to do on water what you're doing on land in terms of electrification. So, Annapolis could be a show place for, could become an all-electric transportation city. I mean, if we really push this hard. And so, but I was just curious, what kind of range and top speed can your vehicles get?
Right now, we have 8 vehicles which can go over 22 miles.
Yeah.
Okay, yellow ones. Okay, before we get down too far. The red ones, which have the doors, we get up to 30 miles. Now the batteries are to the point now where we can get up to 100 miles. Not inexpensive, but worthwhile.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
think that for when we start working with SP Plus on the renovation, we're going to have to get some of the 100-mile things.
Yeah.
Again, we've looked into that and would love to talk with you because it makes a lot of sense for people to go ahead and do the history tour and find out the land side of Annapolis, which is really a museum without walls.
Yeah.
Take them right onto the water, and then now you can see it from the other direction. So it's a great concept.
Yes, that'd be great. I do have good news for you. I think in that some of the motor innovations and the battery innovations that are in the pipeline that we're going to be seeing soon are going to be even better than what you have now. And some amazing stuff is in the pipeline that we're actively negotiating now with some companies that have some killer stuff that is just next level. So strap in. It's going to be a wild ride in a good way.
I'm hoping because the technology is improving,
Yeah.
and this is the future. We're going to get away from combustion fuel, and I really hope you're correct, David.
Yeah, and one other thing, real quick, your vehicles are indispensable during the boat shows, and if any of you get the New York Times. This past Sunday's New York Times had a wonderful article in the review section about the geometry of cars and how we give up so much space to cars in cities, and particularly historic cities. But your vehicles are the ideal answer to that. They're perfect last mile solutions. They're perfect local connectivity solutions. And when you actually calculate their footprint, they're super space efficient. And there's another benefit. In a city with an aging population, you get older, you may not be in a wheelchair, you may not have a true disability, but you can't walk that far sometimes. And your vehicles are great for that too, that they help people who, like from where I live in Eastport, maybe can't walk all the way to downtown, but if they got a lift, they could walk in downtown once they got downtown, right?
And David, that's our goal about having e-cruiser. So somebody who's over on 4th Street or on 2nd Street or on President's Hill, they want to come down, we can come by and pick them up.
Yeah.
And we've got something I'll send out to everybody. I've seen A Future Without Cars, and it's amazing. It's a great article. So, but thank you very much. But I'll send that to you, Kurt, and you can disseminate it.
Craig, can you put your email address in the chat, please?
Oh, absolutely. Can I do that now?
Yeah.
Okay, let me get my IT staff. I'll give her a work order. Where do I type it in?
Where it says chat.
You may have it already as one of the addressees on mail that came from me.
Yes, you did.
Oh, okay, then never mind. Thank you.
Yeah, it's out there. So thank you all very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, and Hope to be working with you all, especially David. We'll be in touch on that.
Great, thanks.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Greg. Moving on the agenda, the next item is, are we meeting in August? A number of boards and commissions and the city council itself take a recess in August. It's been suggested that we might want to consider doing the same thing. I would not oppose it because I expect to be scarce anyway, but I will accede to the wishes of the board. So what is your pleasure?
I vote we do not meet in August. Take a break.
Seconded.
What was that, Kara?
I second that.
Okay, is there any dissent? Hearing nothing, we
I'm
will.
fine. I concur.
All right. We will not meet in August. Enjoy yourselves and we will reconvene in September. However, you're supposed to be working in your areas of expertise. You're not entitled to take any vacation at all. Okay, anyway, thanks very much. Next is a report on some related transportation groups that all of us may be involved in one way or the other. I seem to be sucked into a number of them, and I wanted to inform you of where they stand for me, and to the extent that you are involved in such activities with other groups than this one, I think it would be useful just to exchange that information. So I'll begin this thing. I've been appointed to the Anne Arundel County Bicycle Transportation Commission. Have met only once with them. The chair of that commission is John Coran, a wonderful cyclist and a great organizer, a wonderful enthusiast for all things bicycles, especially transportation and safety. They're doing quite a lot on grant applications, working directly with the county to develop the trail system and improve safety. The thing that's keeping bicycles from really igniting big time is an accurate perception that they are dangerous for too many of us. And so he's working on that. The second thing that I've become involved with is only as an observer is the Anne Arundel County Transportation Commission, which is our counterpart in the county. It's chaired by Arjan van Andel, who used to be on this board. He moved over to the county. And so I'm doing what I can to sort of keep a linkage between these two commissions at the county and city level. The third thing that I mentioned last month, and it has now come to pass, I was appointed by the Anne Arundel County Council to a group which is called the Chesapeake Bay Reconstruction Advisory Group. And my interest is severalfold. The biggest problem that we're facing, certainly in my part of Annapolis, and maybe in your parts also, is spillover traffic from times of congestion on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. They go through tremendous peaks and valleys in traffic. And when it backs up, many drivers think they can outsmart the system by taking alternative routes. Those alternative routes are almost always worse than simply waiting in the line, but they do it anyway. And it causes big congestion problems within the city of Annapolis. There are places outside of Annapolis, closer to the bridge in the county, which have some of the same kinds of problems. And I'm distressed to find that many of the county representatives on this thing think that the solution is simply to put up police barricades so that people can't use the public roads. That has legal problems, serious legal problems. I'm going to be approaching this quite differently, and that's to advocate surge pricing so that at times of peak demand, you will pay for it. And at times of low demand, like 3 o'clock in the morning, you can go free. That will level out the curve, and I think do more than anything else to address this congestion and spill overflow problem that we have in the city. So that's what I've been doing. Is there anybody else that can enlighten us about your own activities?
Can I make a couple comments
Yeah.
from what you said?
Yeah.
Based on this, the Chesapeake Bay thing. First of all, I think I'd mentioned before that surge pricing, they had tried that a couple of years ago. They did it a little differently than we think of surge pricing, but that's what they did. They actually had it free if you went across the bridge after like 7 o'clock at night for so many hours or something like that. And they had various, and they did a lot of advertising for it. They did all kinds of things. It just did not take off. So maybe surge pricing will, but that they tried did not happen. The other thing is on the, you've got to have noticed that on the other side of the bridge, there's all kinds of signs as you come up to the bridge that say, I'm trying to think of what they actually say. They say something about stay on 50, it's best, or something like that, you know, or it's quicker, or there's something, they have a little catchy phrase that they put on the signs that say, look, it's better to just stay where, you know, on 50, don't get off. Because they had so many of those very same problems, Stevensville and whatever, that people were going off and trying to circumvent the problem and then getting back on the bridge at the last minute. So they have these signs up and they start them really early. They're quite far back when they start them. And since I come down 16, I don't stay on 404 to Bridgeville. So I don't know if they go past that, but they do start pretty early. Well, obviously that's too far back, but they certainly start on 50. Almost the time I come on at 404. Maybe they do before that. That's what I mean. Not on 404. But so that's another way to keep getting people to understand that going off is not going to benefit them in any way. It really isn't. And so
that's been discussed, actually putting up signs that give real-time feedback on the amount of time you will lose by getting off the road you're already on. And they've,
well, you know, that all sounds good, but getting the state to put on to put the money out, especially now under these circumstances, to do real time, I don't see it happening, and not for a long time, because the state's got to recover, and who knows when the state is going to recover. And so, you know, I mean, just little signs cost more than I would think they would ever cost. So I'm just saying that's a way. So maybe in this case, since you don't have to put up things like signs and stuff, maybe surge pricing is way, but you got to advertise it.
Well, it all depends on the algorithm too.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to advertise it. So you got to pay for it that way.
You've got to pick an algorithm that works.
Yeah. But anyway, they did try it. So that was it. And then just mentioning the signs. So that was all.
The rest of the members of the board, who else is involved in one thing or another?
Kurt, I have something to update the group on. This is Zoe.
Excellent.
I've been working with the city to apply for a grant through the Department of Defense Office of Economic Adjustment that will look at resiliency issues. And one of the potential remedies to address resiliency or that help mitigate the impacts is working on traffic signal upgrades that would allow for easing of congestion, but more importantly, during an extreme event or a disaster, would help with evacuation. And so the project, the city just put in the grant application. So we're waiting to hear, but included in that grant application was a 35% design of traffic signals on sort of the King George, West Annapolis, Rao Boulevard, and then West Street corridors leading out of the city. So it would help with the Academy's evacuation and response, as well as, those two other corridors within the city. So we should be hearing soon on this. But another important piece is that this grant application is building off of another assessment that the city is already undertaking that's analyzing the current traffic signal system within the city. So Lisa Greco is the lead for that. But when that project wraps up at the city, it'd be interesting to have this board hear the results of that assessment and where there are opportunities either for enhancements or other issues or other recommendations for improvements within the existing transportation signals.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Zoe.
Actually, I do have something. I never think about these things, but I worked with Ellie on getting, presenting to the city council about parking, the display of residential parking permits on the cars. And it's in process, but it's moving along. Ellie tells me she's sure that it's going to pass, but it just has to do its thing and, get its first reader, second reader and all that. And so, but it's working and so it won't affect this year. It could be announced that people need to do it once it's passed and all that. But next year, when the parking permits come out, they should come out with a whole different announcement or directions of what you're supposed to do. And that you absolutely have to put them on your car for display. And so that helps to solve that issue of residents being proactive on parking in on their own streets or in their own areas, which is very important and is very helpful to SB Plus. That's the thing. I mean, it's so it's really important, and it's important for the frustration level of the residents as to what is happening and who's taking up all their parking places and why, and gee, how come nobody ever comes and how come nobody ever does anything, and which I don't find. If I call SB Plus, they always come. Do they come back in 2 hours to check that it's still here? I don't know, but they do always come the first time when I call.
It's been extremely frustrating because SP Plus would argue that they're not necessary. That is correct. They do strictly license plate technology. And to Beth's point, it's then up to a resident to actually go out on the street. It might be their neighbor's car. They don't know. They're looking at the license plate. They're writing it down. And then lo and behold, they call SP Plus and it's their neighbor, diagonal neighbor, and they're like embarrassed. But they have been always with your sticker. They'll say, place it here. But I guess nobody pays attention to that.
Because they have that statement at the bottom that says, it's not really used for issuing tickets. So you say, gee, why bother?
Yeah, so the big thing here is messaging. I mean, we changed the code, the legislation deletes that verbiage and says you just, you got to put it on. And I couldn't get a fine in there because we just passed, the council just passed the fee and fine schedule. But they can be ticketed, and then it was discussed that they would get a warning and that kind of stuff. But it's interesting because of the recovery zone, we implemented just temporary residential only parking on one side of Prince George Street. And I'm assuming they're all residents, but I drive down that street and I don't see one sticker. And it gets me upset because I believe that if those cars displayed their stickers, it shows a sense of ownership. I know that when I go to DC and visit my son, I don't even have to look at the signs. I see the cars all parked there with their decal on, and I know it's like going to the beach, they all have the decal. You know? So, I mean, that might just be old fashioned, but I just think that this is something, it's a no-brainer. And it's.
Well, you can be sure that in places like DC, and I'll tell you, Old Town Alexandria, where Jim lived before we got married, those residents are extremely, extremely watchful of their streets and their parking, and you don't get away with much, if anything, and that's what we need, but we've got to have something to be able to do it with.
Yeah,
And-
I actually even wanted them bigger.
Pardon?
I actually even wanted them to be bigger.
Well, they used to be.
They used to
And
be.
then all of a sudden they got these teeny little things.
Cost savings. I don't know.
Yeah. But there you can see them. The other thing is they say put them on the back window. In today's world, that's not where they go. You'll never see them on the back window unless you get your nose and press it against the window.
Yeah, there's no need.
It needs to be put on the left front window. And, that's where it needs to go.
All right, so this is in progress. We have something of a time problem. Let me try to
Okay.
push on to other folks. Are there other people who are involved in other transportation endeavors around the city or county?
I have a very short update.
Sure.
I will be Zooming this week with John Corrin, who you just mentioned earlier, Kurt, from Bicycle Advocates for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, to talk about how things are progressing with the replacement of the bike share PACE. So he and I will be speaking this week, and Kurt, I will likely be seeing you at the next Bike Commission meeting on August 11th. So I think I'll have more to report when we convene again in September.
That's great. You have any intelligence on PACE and so forth? I guess that's still evolving.
Yeah, so I mean, I know PACE is going to be gone,
Okay,
and I know it's been deactivated. I think it was as of June.
okay.
But the replacement of that mobility share is, I don't know what the details are yet, but hoping to learn more this week.
Okay, great, thanks. Anybody else?
Yes, Kurt. This past Friday, Carol and I had a Zoom call with Dana Jones. We were scheduled for half an hour. We went to a full hour, and she and I walked her through the various issues, both local, state, and even some national issues, and some history and background. I was very impressed with her. She was very professional and very open to hearing our concerns. And she has, in response to our resolution, submitted a request to the delegate whose name I can't remember, who organized and started and is the keeper of the membership list for that transit caucus.
Yeah, that's the next
so-
item on the agenda, David.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go on to legislation, because this actually it's the next to the next thing. Let's go through the agenda that we have considered or might be considering. The first one is 0720 for designating loading zones, a piece of legislation proposed, I believe, by Dewan Gay, that would have put restrictions on services like Lyft and Uber over where they can pick up passengers within the city. And there were technical problems, most strenuously voiced, I guess, by well, actually, several people had some problems. The summary conclusion, as I understand it, is that the legislation died, and there's going to be an attempt to take care of this administratively within the Annapolis Department of Transportation. Ellie, is that your understanding of where we are?
Yes, unfortunately, after all that, it was recommended by Michael Lyles, the city attorney, that this is something that just can be handled administratively. And I suggested that it could be subject to, not subject, but you would probably want to review if it was some sort of substantial location. I mean, the objective here is for existing loading docks, loading spaces to have multiple uses. I think my colleague Alderman Arnett was just concerned that these would be thrown upon him without any input, but But SP Plus, working with the Transportation Department, will review for an application where they see it being used so that people aren't dropped off in the middle of the street. It's a safety consideration.
Okay, great, thanks. I had a pretty good fix on that then.
Yeah.
The 02820, the parking permit display ordinance has already been discussed, so I'll skip over that. 01420 was to put a fine on the use of parking spaces reserved for plug-in electric vehicles by non-electric vehicles, and that has passed. That's completed, isn't it? All readers. It is now law. Is that correct, Ellie? Yeah.
Memory. I think it was passed last meeting.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I can double check. If it's otherwise, I'll email you.
Yeah.
I heard at the last meeting.
Wasn't it passed? We voted on it, I thought.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Next thing, last time we discussed a number of resolutions, two of them. The first was a recommendation, and David DeQuincio gets all of the honor for putting these forward. He suggested that we do what we can to see that the Transit Caucus of the state legislature continues to be populated by our own representatives, since Alice Kane had dropped out and we were no longer represented. We now have I was contacted by two people, by Dana Jones and by Shanika Henson. I understand that they have agreed among them that Dana Jones would be taking that seat on the Transit Caucus. Is that your understanding, David?
Actually, that's more detailed than I had heard. And one of the things that's still a little unclear to me is because there's not much information on the Transit Caucus website as to is that the intention of the way that caucus is designed, that there should only be one member. In other words, a district represented by 2 delegates in the House, there should only be one of those two, or
I don't know that they have any sort of limitation of that kind, but the delegates themselves have limitations on their own energies and time. And so what our delegation has tried to do in many such cases is to sort of designate a lead person for our delegation in various caucuses. Right. And they have worked out among themselves that for this one, it will be Dana Jones.
Well, I'm very happy with that. Sorry I jumped the gun there, but yeah, we had a very good conversation with Dana. And she did say that she would reach out to Senator Elfreth.
Okay, good. The next thing was your proposal, our proposal, since we adopted it, that the city adopt the National Association of City Transportation Officials principles described in the blueprint for autonomous urbanism. That recommendation has been passed to the council, and it's up to them. So I don't have an explicit response yet. I assume it'll take a while for them to chew on it.
What would be the next step for the council?
Ellie, you speak.
I guess to write a resolution, probably incorporating the same language so that it would be a city council resolution. I haven't. Rob Savage, Alderman Savage, showed an interest in doing that when he saw it, but I'll follow up and make sure that it's live.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent.
And if there's any assistance I can provide in putting that together, I'm happy to provide it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. The next thing, this is a catch-all. We are, all of us, supposed to be working in our designated areas to bring our expertise and our enthusiasm and our passions to the board so that we can move forward as a board on those that strike the most fire. So this is your opportunity to tell us all where you are. And so I will just go through through the list. Tom has a number of interest areas: residential parking, replacing the new garage, city dock issues. Tom, are you still on?
So, Kurt, I'm still here.
Good.
As you all know, I circulated to the board members I'll call it a findings document. And the bottom line were some recommendations that have to do with clarifying some ambiguity in the eligibility criteria for residential parking. The question I have to ask the group is, first of all, who has read that document?
I have
Twice.
read the document.
All right, and now, in order to have the best discussion on this matter, I have to really encourage everyone to take the time to read the document, understand the background to it, and then give me a head nod as to whether you agree with the recommendation at the bottom of the document. For those of us that live in the historic district, for those of us who are challenged with parking day in and day out, the residential parking program gives us the best shot that we have as residents to win at parking roulette. There are a finite number of spaces on the city streets for individuals to park. Now, we have to share as residents those spaces with contractors, visitors, and other transient parkers. Given that there's a finite number of spaces, our guiding principle is to ensure that residential parking, that those residential streets are used primarily by residents for residential parking. Now, there's a whole process that an individual goes through to apply for that residential parking privilege. There are very precise eligibility criteria, and there's an adjudicative process. What I outlined in this findings document was an area of ambiguity which has non-residents. The law says bona fide residents. The way the process out today, non-residents can obtain residential parking privileges. Now, in some cases, this is simply based on a ambiguity in the law or the language, but in other cases, it seems to be with a broad discretionary interpretation of the law. So, if you would, I know that we're not going to have a meeting in August, but as Kurt said, that doesn't obviate the need to move forward on these challenges, which is why I took the time to lay it out in a simple 3-page document instead of the previous 9 pages in hopes that you would take the time to go over it, digest it, and basically give me a thumbs up that you agree, disagree, we need to change, or we just need to move forward on it like we did with Dave's resolutions.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to me that your thinking piece is excellent. It sets out the issues very nicely. Is that in the form that we should endorse without change for forwarding to the city council, or should it be cast in the form of a resolution or recommendation instead?
But I think before we do anything, I think we need to talk about it because I think there are some issues that need to be talked about personally.
Okay, what are they?
Pardon?
Yeah, what are your issues?
Well, if you're a non-resident owner and you come to your home in Annapolis for long periods of time, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and you do it, I don't know, 3-4 times a year, the way it's set up now, your ability to get parking for a car is almost, it's almost non-existent because you can't accumulate parking stickers anymore, so you don't have any enough, and you're non-resident, so you can't get any kind of long-term parking. Now you could buy a car and sit it on the street and have it sit there for 365 days, of which you would only use it the times that you're here. You can do that. And you would have a residential parking sticker on it, but you can't do it on a, when you come to visit. And I think that is, and I'm not talking about a company that comes in and owns 5 houses or 4 houses or 3. I'm talking about one person who owns, or a person who owns one home. It may have been a Naval Academy person that when they retire, they want to return to Annapolis. They don't want to give up their home. So they keep it. It could be someone else in a similar situation that loves Annapolis, thinks that when they retire, they might like to be here. So I think that particular issue, dealing with parking, needs to be resolved. Right now, it's a very thorny issue for those people. And I think it really needs to be resolved before otherwise, I don't disagree with what Tom's written, but I think that particular class of homeowner, quasi-resident, non-resident homeowner, whatever you want to call it, I think that has to be in some way accommodated in parking.
Could I make a
Beth,
suggestion?
let me point out that is accommodated under the current code. A non-resident homeowner can obtain parking for the entire time that they are in residence at their property in Annapolis.
When
All
did
they
that
have to
change?
do-
When did that change?
0419 changed that in April of last year. That's over
funny.
a year.
That's funny because I know people who have not been able to do that. So there's a confusion somewhere with SP Plus that needs to be straightened out because they haven't been able to do it.
So let me suggest that it's not a problem with the existing law. It could be a problem with the way SP Plus administers the program. But let me assure you that the law is quite particular and does make the very accommodation that you are discussing.
So if you're a homeowner,
Just a moment here. This is a fairly detailed subject, and it's one that frankly hurts my brain. And I have one other problem that is sort of personal, and I'm not going to get into it because my personal views are so at variance with those of many people who live in Ward 1 and with the law itself that I think I am better just to stay silent on the issue. I'm very happy to defer to Beth and Tom, and I would suggest and hope that the two of them could come together with a discrete and clear recommendation for the entire board to endorse on this matter. Is that something we can do?
well, if Tom
So
will
this-
talk to me, he hasn't really wanted to talk to me. So we've kind of gone at this from two different ways. Tom, will you talk to me on this? And we can work it out? Come up with something?
What I have done is prepared a document for everyone to review. The document cites various emails, various conversations, and facts relating to a very precise issue. I am not looking to solve every single problem with the residential parking program. We're going to have to go about this the same way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. This document lays out chapter and verse an issue with the way these cases are adjudicated. It lays out an ambiguity in the law, which may require legislation. My suggestion is focus on one piece at a time. Alderwoman Tierney has already introduced legislation relative to how the parking permits are displayed. And that's a wonderful thing. But what we also have to do is take every step that we can to ensure that only bona fide residents are the ones that are obtaining those permits. And when I encounter a flaw, when I encounter situations or when my neighbors bring situations to my attention, then I look into it, I chronicle it, I write it down, and then ask folks to take a look and discuss those issues that have been articulated. That's the only way that we can focus our efforts and move forward.
Could I just interject real quickly? I know, Kurt, you're on a timetable, but I think you are talking past each other. I think Beth is, to address Beth's concern, there is at the end of the legislation, it's the last paragraph, because there was a big discussion on how to address this sector of population, call them snowbirds if you want. So there was this compromise, because at first because of the saturation of the spots, we were not going to give them residential parking permits, but they can have them, but they can't get the temporary passes. But it is in the last paragraph of the legislation. I can't recollect what they need to show SP Plus, but I'm sure that's what the hang up is on them not being able to acquire this permit. I think they have to show some evidence of living here for a certain amount of time, because they'll get it for that duration. And then Tom's argument is that the legislation, I'm not only saying this because I sponsored it, is I think it's pretty solid. It's just that there's an avenue of discretion that's being utilized. And I think we want to try to find some way so that avenue of discretion is not utilized. So that's what I believe is what we need to address. Am I somewhat on target there, Tom?
So Ellie, the challenge is we have a municipal code. We have a municipal code that lays out a set of rules.
Right.
It seems to me that there are city staff members that want to interpret the rule set all manner of different ways. So what I have suggested in this Transportation Board finding is that the Transportation Board steps up and does its job in reviewing the policy. Now, I do believe I've set out a pretty clear review of this one area of concern. Now, what I'm looking for is we can either accept it or reject it, but there's no reason to debate the contents of this particular item. If we don't start taking these discrete steps and focus on these identified areas, now again, maybe it's a matter of putting a particular phrase in the legislation, but I don't think that's really required. Perhaps what we should do is send this document to the Office of Law and say, all right, folks, give us an opinion here, but let's get consistency into the adjudicative process. Then we can chip away at the other issues that Beth and I both want to take on. So the law, though, is the rule set, and it has to be fairly and consistently applied. Now, when we've got a group of Naval Academy graduates with 6 pieces living in a home that is only licensed for short-term rental, that's a problem. That's a problem more exacerbated when they all get residential parking. So this is the challenge. So that's why this area needs to be, we need to fix this. And if the ATB doesn't have if this isn't within our charter, and I do believe it is, then why are we meeting?
Tom, I think this issue is certainly very much within our charter. I have a problem, and please help me. I don't quite understand what action. I'd like us to take action on an issue that you think is important. And what should that action be? Should it be a letter of inquiry to the Office of Law? Should it be a recommendation to the City Council for legislation? Should it be a recommendation to the city administration for a change in the manner of administration of the existing law? Can we make our recommendation very clear and very discreet about what it is we want?
So your question is those are all very fair questions. The Transportation Board gets to decide how they want to move this forward. But before we have to know what we're moving forward. I've already written the words. How those words are further hell, I really don't care. I don't care whether we write a letter to the mayor and the city council and say, the Annapolis Transportation Board has generated this finding. Let's report it to the Transportation Committee. Let's ask Rick Gordon to weigh in on it. There's a whole lot of things we can do. But before I were to take any of those steps, I would look for a head nod from the large that gives consensus on, one, recognizing that this is a problem and wishing to move forward on the recommendation. The rest of it is the vehicle that we use to move it forward. But if the board says, no, forget about it, Tom, we're not gonna do anything with it, then it's like, what's the point? Remember, when we sent the resolutions off, there was immediate pushback that says, well, the board doesn't have the right to tell us how to go about doing things, But Rob Savage said, look, don't worry about the form that it comes, consider more on what's being said. So I don't know. I have no definite answer as to how to move this forward. But I'll tell you what, without the words being written as they have been, there is nothing to move forward.
May I suggest a path forward, Tom? Just because the city attorney was intimately involved in some of these issuances, and I think has since that he has been copied on any email correspondence regarding the same. So I think ultimately it will be a policy change. And I suggest, and I feel confident that if the board has a list of recommendations to fix this, for lack of a better word, he would sit down. It would be a sit-down meeting with Michael Lyles.
I absolutely agree that the Office of Law should be the first step in this. I absolutely agree that we don't have to read legislation. I agree that there needs to be a consistent application And if it's Michael Lyles who takes this document and then prepares guidance to the city staff based on this, then that is the absolute success. What is the best way to get next to Michael Lyles?
I can arrange that. When you're
That
ready.
works for me, Ellie. Yeah,
What-
let's, you know, I will draft up essentially some type of cover letter that we could use. But in order to give this some gravitas, I would like to be able to say that the Annapolis Transportation Board, that this is an output of the board, that this is reached consensus on the board. So it's important that this becomes some type of output that is the input to the Office of Law. So again, the form of it really doesn't matter. What matters is the words on the page and the background to it. Now, we can take a lesson from the way the Ethics Committee publishes their rulings. They simply come up with a memorandum. It's a memorandum that goes to a whole litany of people from the chairman of the ethics board, and it moves forward to city staff. Now, again, that's a process that we can come up with. But whatever you think works. I mean, I'll write a cover letter, but it has to be couched in terms of this being an output of the Annapolis Transportation Board. And if I don't get consensus
Tom,
from the board,
please give us something that is exactly that we can vote yes or no on.
I gave it to you, Kurt.
You will find.
You have it in front of you.
Well, you have a finding. Well, what do you want to do with it? You want to go? You want to
Give me a
use?
vote. Just as we did with the resolutions. Give me a vote that this is an output of the Transportation Board, and then the next steps will be how we get it to the Office of Law. But if I don't get consensus from the board, then what's the point?
Do I have a motion? Are you moving that we? What are you moving that we do? Adopt your memorandum?
Sure, I'll make a motion that the board accept this finding, and we move it on to the appropriate city staff.
All right, is there a second? Not hearing a second. Maybe you're all muted.
Moving it on to appropriate city staff for what action?
So Kara, there's a recommendation that clarifies some ambiguous language, and the recommendation notes that the adjudications that are done should be done based on an existing type of license, and that the leases submitted conform to the code. So the recommendations have already been articulated in this document. So this document stands on its own, and my hope was that this would be the type of initiative that the Annapolis Transportation Board would take on to improve city processes and to have that oversight, of city policy. I just look at this clearly as something that falls underneath our duties. But unless we write things out, then we're just talking about it.
Right.
So
So I guess if this goes to city staff, this is to, I guess, formally make them aware that this law requires clarification, or we believe that this law requires clarification.
this essentially will be a formal notice from the Annapolis Transportation Board that the Annapolis Transportation Board has looked at a particular issue and that the board has arrived at a conclusion on that issue and has made recommendations out as to how to resolve it. It's just that simple. Like I say, when folks go before the Ethics Commission, they may render an opinion. To some degree, what we are doing is rendering an opinion. We've looked at the way the city handles a particular process. We've looked at it in the context of the law. We've looked at it in the context of what they're doing, and we've noticed where the gaps are. And now we are giving the city a potential solution to fill a gap and solve a problem.
All right, I'm still a little uncertain about, but you have an existing document. We have all read it. It seems reasonable to me. Your analysis is more expert than my own. Your knowledge is more expert. I'm so happy to defer to you on the scope of what you have outlined. I'm a little unclear about what we do with it. Do you simply want to forward it to the Office of Law? I mean, what is the action that we are seeking?
So let me suggest that the first action that I seek is to make this a formal part of the minutes of this particular meeting, to get this document included in what will be a public record of this meeting. Now, in order to do that, all right, I would like the board's consensus that this is the type of work that the board should be doing, and a willingness to put it in the public record and expose it and make it transparent. That's number one. Then the next thing is we say, oh, okay, now we've done this. What do we do with it? You're right. Well, we send it to the mayor, we send it to the Office of Law, and we say, this is our recommendation. Please let us know how you're going to proceed, or how you are going to implement this, or how you want us to work with you on this. We can wordsmith it any way we want. But again, the thought here was, just as Dave drafted up resolutions and we brought it to the full board to give it a head nod, and then how were those passed on? They were maybe just attached to an email and sent to somebody. I mean, I don't know.
We adopted a resolution and it was forwarded to the city council. And that was the action in that case. In this case,
So let me
send a letter.
let me suggest we adopt this finding and then forward it on to the Office of Law.
All right. Well, that's
really what the motion is on the floor, that the Annapolis Transportation Board adopt, that they adopt this finding and recommend it be forward to the Office of Law, or whatever we want to do, however we want to say it. But if we don't start by adopting this finding, then what's the point?
well, yeah. Okay. The proposal is clear. Do we have a second? And then we'll vote. And I mean, it sounds reasonable to me.
I'll second it.
Okay. Let's take a vote, and Tom, you will close the loop on actually developing an instrument that is a letter or a resolution or something that expresses the sense of whatever the outcome of this vote is. Is that correct?
Absolutely,
Okay.
Kurt. That, again, the cover letter, there will be some other type of cover letter of transmittal, whatever we want to call it. But this, I just think, is like the first step of developing a process of how we will communicate our findings, back to the administration.
Okay.
I don't think we've done this kind of thing in the past, because I haven't been here in the past, but this is, it's an iterative process.
Okay, time is passing. Let us have a vote. All those in favor of the proposed action that Tom has put forward, raise your hand or say aye or both. Aye.
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 That's 1, 2, 3. Any other votes? Any other aye votes? All those opposed? I counted 4. I'm not, Beth, I don't have anything. Cara, you're both muted, so I hear nothing. I hear nothing from, oh, what happened to, Zoe is gone.
I'm still online.
Ah, I don't see you here anywhere. That's odd.
I can see myself.
All right. Zoe, have you voted for or against?
I voted yay.
All right. So that's, and Cara?
Sorry, my dog's getting loud in here. I'm going to abstain from this vote.
All right. And Beth, did you vote? I'm not hearing any. You're muted.
Yeah,
You're muted. You're still muted.
Me. Oh, there it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, I said I abstained.
Okay. I counted 5 votes, A, and 2 abstentions. Do I have that correct?
Thought you had 3.
Well, there was me, David, Zoe, Tom, 4. 4 in favor, 2 abstentions. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so it passes. Tom, you can run with this. Let's go on to the next
Thank you,
item.
folks. I'll get something back to everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's try to go down the list relatively quickly. Time is passing. Beth, you're next.
We already discussed it.
Okay. Cara?
My update from earlier still stands.
All right. Carol is not here. Zoe, you are.
My update, it still stands as well, working with the city on some congestion problems.
Okay, great. David, anything else?
I have nothing else.
All right, I'm next here. I'll just tell you that I feel really guilty over not having carried my items forward. The ones that I really want to put a lot of effort into is the feasibility of fare free transit in Annapolis. And I ask any of you who have a similar interest to let me know so that we can work together on it.
Well, you and I were working together on it. We're
Okay.
supposed to anyway.
All right, great. Well, I'm behind. Maybe you can help me catch up.
Well, I've asked a few questions and I always get "Ah!" when I do. So I haven't gone any further than that.
And then finally, the bicycle stuff. I really want to help Gavin get his Wii going and a number of other, particularly safety improvement segregated bicycle paths and something. No, we're never going to get people on bicycles unless they regard it as safe. The other thing I'll say, no, that's all I have to say. Is Kwaku still on board?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I did send you the monthly reports with intent for distribution. Did you get it?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay. Just a few highlights from that. If you will recall, it gives you a comparison of FY 2020 versus FY 2019. In terms of ridership, we were down by about 16%, mostly due to the pandemic. So if you take a look at the graphs, you can have an idea in terms of ridership. I think in the graph, I have 3 fiscal years where you can see the ridership by route, what's happening. And I think during the discussion of the e-cruises, I did hear that the circulator is almost empty. Actually, if you dig down the data, it shows this year is down. This year we carried about 37,000 people. Last year we had about 62,000 people who actually took the circulator. So the fact that sometimes you see it's empty doesn't mean that people do not take it. So for overall transit ridership, it was down by about 17% in terms of actual numbers. That is about 70,000 rides, i.e. compared to 2019, we were down by more than 70,000 ridership, partly or mainly due to the pandemic. The revenue side, we were down by about 10%, largely because if you recall, we do have the state employees taking the state shuttle, and the city has an agreement with DGS, Department of General Services, that they pay a fixed amount of money to the city for the state employees who actually take the buses. Despite the fact that most of the state employees were home, we still got all the money. So that is why you do not see a major reduction in fare revenue, especially for the state shuttle. I think that is all that I have. There are no new projects going on right now. We still work with the county in terms of other projects the counties carry on. You might have heard about the feasibility study of a multimodal transportation center. We are also working with them on that. And when there is a need, they will give us a call. We will meet and then talk about transportation related issues that affect the whole county. Apart from that, I do not have anything else. If you have questions, I'll be glad to respond to them.
Kwaku, on the Multimodal Transportation Center, who is leading that? Is that the Director of Transportation for the county?
Yes, Mr. Raymond Robinson.
All right. Good. Maybe we at some point could find out about that.
Sure.
A presentation on that subject might be something for the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just if you will recall, both the county and the city in the previous years actually had carried out at least 2 feasibility studies of a multimodal center. One was prior to 2000, just before I got here. The city and the county work on a much more detailed plan. There was also another one that came up during the development of the Paro Town Center and Annapolis Town Center, where initially it was supposed to be part of the parking facility. And I believe I do recall correctly, there was a change in ownership of the property. So the second ownership did present to, I believe, the county council that given change of circumstances, they could not support the multimodal hub at the Annapolis Town Center. So eventually it was removed from the plan. And we also actually did carry out one with grant fund about, I would say 7 years ago, again, looking at potential locations. So we have carried out quite a bit of feasibility studies for multimodal centers. The issue has always been, where is the appropriate location? So hopefully with this county feasibility study, there will be some concrete steps. But my reading is that the county government is putting aside money for the actual design and construction of that. So from the feasibility study, it may go to planning and then to the next phase.
Okay. Thanks very much. Yeah, that can be important. Any new business? Time is wearing on. Hearing nothing, I will happily move to adjourn, if that is okay with everybody. And I wish everybody a happy August. Take some vacation. You can have up to 1 day.
Second the motion.
Bye.
Thanks, Kurt.
Good night.
Great.
Thank you
Bye,
very
everybody.
much.
See